Greetings, traveler. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself standing on the edge of a snow-covered battlefield. The air is biting and cold, a sharp contrast to the heat of the sun you once felt in warmer lands. The weight of failure presses down on your shoulders, and you feel the weight of history itself in the air. It's 1148, and you are among the Crusaders of the Second Crusade, a campaign meant to bring glory to Christendom, but now tainted with the taste of bitter defeat. Led by Kings Louis VII of France and Conrad III of Germany, you and your fellow soldiers set out with the hope of reclaiming the Holy Land. The plan was grand, filled with ambition, yet what was meant to be a glorious triumph has ended in crushing failure. Forced to retreat from the city of Damascus, your army marches back in defeat, disillusioned and broken. But that's only part of the story. As you take those first steps of the long retreat, a cruel winter arrives, swift and unforgiving. Snow begins to fall, thick and heavy, and the temperatures plunge to a level that turns the very air into an enemy. What was once a campaign to conquer now becomes a desperate battle for survival. Your hope has been shattered, but now you face an even greater enemy, hunger, frostbite, and the fierce grip of despair. You're no longer just marching for glory. You are now fighting to stay alive. This is a story of survival against all odds, where nature itself becomes your fiercest adversary. And the very land you once sought to conquer now stands as the ultimate obstacle. So let me ask you, what would you do when the battle is over, when there are no enemies left to fight, but only the cold hunger and your own will to survive? Welcome to the story of how the Second Crusade became more than just a failed military campaign. It became a brutal struggle for survival. You stand in the shadow of Damascus, the walls of the great city looming before you. It was meant to be your victory, your triumph. The banners of Christendom were supposed to fly high over these gates, but instead, you watch as they remain locked, silent in defiance. The siege has failed, and with it, the dreams of a glorious conquest. You feel the weight of defeat pressing on your shoulders, a sense of hopelessness beginning to seep into your bones. The once mighty army brimming with anticipation just weeks ago now seems a collection of weary souls' hearts, heavy with the bitter taste of failure. You glance at your comrades, exhausted, ragged, their eyes hollow from days of relentless effort and little reward. There are no words of triumph to share, only silence. The only sound that fills the air is the occasional crunch of boots against the wet earth as the retreat begins. The retreat begins with no fanfare, no last rallying cry, no triumphant anthem to rally your spirits. Instead, the air is thick with the quiet resignation of defeat. The city that once held so much promise now recedes into the distance behind you, a symbol of shattered dreams and broken ambitions. Damascus, the target of all your hopes, is left behind like a fallen prize, its gates closed firmly against you. You turn away from the city, feeling the weight of its rejection settle in your chest. With each step you take, the crushing burden of failure grows heavier. The men around you march in silence, their once proud postures slumped and defeated. The sun beats down on your shoulders, but even its heat can't shake the coldness of your spirit. The thrill of battle, the promises of glory, all seem like distant memories, now fading like smoke in the wind. As you trudge through the mud and snow, you can't help but wonder how things went so wrong. The strategies, the plans, all of it seemed so certain when you set out. But now, it feels like the world itself is against you. You glance at your fellow soldiers, those who once spoke of victory, now reduced to ghosts of their former selves. There are no more words of encouragement, no more bravado. The only sounds are the soft shuffle of boots, the rhythmic crunch of snow underfoot, and the occasional cough or groan from the men around you. The roads are a mixture of thick, clinging mud and icy patches that threaten to bring even the strongest of you to your knees. The once solid path now feels treacherous and uncertain, much like the future that stretches out before you. The march once filled with purpose now feels like a slow death march, each step a reminder of how far you are from victory, how much farther you must go to escape the suffocating weight of failure. The exhaustion begins to set in after the first few miles, your muscles protesting with every movement. You feel the cold creep into your bones, its grip tightening with each passing hour. The men around you show the same weariness, some slowing their pace, others falling behind completely. There is no room for sentimentality, no time to tend to those who can no longer keep up. They fall away, their fates sealed by the brutal, indifferent march of time. You glance to the side at a fellow soldier, his face pale, his breath labored. He catches your eye for a brief moment before looking down again, unable or unwilling to meet your gaze. The words you want to say, the words of solidarity, of encouragement, die on your tongue. What can you say to a man who knows as well as you do that survival is no longer a matter of willpower, but of chance? As the hours drag on, the road grows even more treacherous. The snow, once a gentle dusting on the ground, has become a thick carpet of ice and slush, making every step more difficult than the last. The wind picks up, biting into your skin, and the chill of the air is a constant reminder of how far from safety you truly are. The warmth of the fires you once sat around in the camp seems like a memory from another life. and the thought of finding shelter of respite seems as distant as the city of Damascus itself. With every passing mile, you grow more and more uncertain. How much longer can you keep going like this? The road ahead seems endless, stretching out into the darkening horizon. There is no sign of relief, no hope of victory, just the slow, grinding march toward some unknown destination. And the worst part, you don't even know if there will be an end to this at all. The thought crosses your mind that perhaps the journey is more than just the physical march back to safety. Perhaps it's a march towards something even darker, an acceptance of the harsh realities of war, of failure, of life itself. You try to shake the thought off, but it clings to you, growing heavier with each passing moment. Your boots sink deeper into the snow, each step a laborious effort. The cold bites harder now, nipping at your fingers, your nose, your ears. You can feel your face grow stiff, the skin chapped and raw from the unrelenting cold. The heavy armor that once protected you now feels like a burden weighing you down with each step, a symbol of the wasted effort, the lost time. The men around you are beginning to slow even further, their steps becoming more and more erratic, their faces drawn and hollow. The weight of their own failure is mirrored in their physical decline. Some mutter quietly to themselves, while others stare blankly ahead, as if hoping the journey will end if they stop paying attention to it. But there is no stopping. The road stretches on, and with every step it becomes more and more clear there is no going back. Whatever hope you had for glory, for redemption, for victory, has been stripped away by the cold, the hunger, and the unrelenting passage of time. All that remains now is survival, surviving the bitter elements, surviving the pain of failure, and hoping that somehow, just somehow, you'll find a way to make it through. The road ahead is treacherous, muddy, and slick with the remnants of the winter storm. You can barely make out the path in front of you, the ground swallowed by thick layers of snow and ice. It's a far cry from the sun-baked roads you once marched along with hope and confidence. Now, every step forward feels like an arduous struggle, as though the very earth is conspiring against you. You have no way of knowing how long the journey will take, nor if you'll make it through the unforgiving terrain. The further you move from Damascus, the less certain your survival seems. You glance around at the faces of your fellow soldiers, men who once stood tall with pride, now bent under the weight of their exhaustion. There's no talk of strategy, no hint of future plans. Only one thought remains in your mind getting through this alive. The cold air bites at your skin, and the harsh wind stings your eyes as it sweeps through the craggy landscape. Your breath comes in visible puffs, as if each exhale is an offering to the relentless winter. Every step is harder than the last, your boots sinking deeper into the snow, which seems to pull at you, slow you down, drag you into the earth. The once ambitious journey has now become a desperate fight to keep moving, to keep your feet moving forward, even when your body begs for rest. You push yourself onward, but with each passing mile, the weight of your armor feels heavier, the pack on your back, a burden that becomes harder to bear. The fatigue is overwhelming. Your legs ache with every step, your joints stiff from the cold, and your hands numb despite your attempts to warm them. The blood in your veins feels like ice, and you wonder if it's even worth the effort to keep moving. But then you see the faces around you, hollow eyes, slack jaws, and shuffling feet. Men who once stood as proud knights and soldiers now look like shadows reduced to mere husks of their former selves. The silence between you and your comrades is suffocating. There are no words of encouragement, no discussions about strategy or future plans. Even the murmurs of frustration have died down, swallowed by the weight of the storm. There's no fighting left in them, no energy for anything other than the monotonous, soul-crushing march forward. Everyone seems lost in their own thoughts, consumed by their own doubts and fears. You glance at the men ahead of you, watching them stumble forward, their heads bowed, the weight of defeat heavy on their shoulders. Their faces are pinched with exhaustion, their eyes glazed over with a combination of hunger, cold, and despair. Some of them fall behind, too tired to keep up their bodies, giving in to the grueling conditions. No one stops for them. There's no time. The group continues to trudge forward, but there's a sense that those who fall behind may never be seen again. The air is thick with the stench of sweat and damp of men struggling against the elements of lives worn down by the unforgiving cold. There are no fires to warm you, no shelter to shield you from the snow and biting wind. All you have are the clothes on your back, the food rations long exhausted, and the faint hope that somehow you'll make it through. But even that hope feels like a distant memory, a flickering light on the edge of your consciousness. Every so often, you hear the faint sound of a man collapsing behind you, his feet giving out from under him, unable to continue. You don't turn back. You can't afford to. The group keeps moving one foot in front of the other, slowly, endlessly. There's no going back now. The cold is like a shackle around your mind, numbing your thoughts, stripping away any remnants of your former strength. All that remains is the cold, the snow, and the bitter reality that you are no longer part of an army marching toward glory, but a group of men struggling to survive. Your throat is dry, your lips cracked, and you feel the gnawing hunger in your gut, but there is no food in sight. The bitter winds are relentless, cutting through your cloak, your layers of armor as if nothing can shield you from the unforgiving elements. You can't even remember the last time you had a decent meal, but hunger is a constant companion, an ever-present ache in your stomach. You swallow hard, trying to push away the despair that is slowly creeping in. There's nothing to do but keep moving. The sun has long since disappeared, and the sky is an endless expanse of gray clouds, heavy and oppressive. The path stretches on a long, narrow ribbon of snow and ice winding through the barren landscape. There is no end in sight. You look up at the sky and wonder how much longer you can go on. The thought of giving up crosses your mind, but you know that's not an option. You are part of this retreat now, bound by the same struggle as every man around you. The only question left is whether or not you can survive it. But survival itself feels like an impossible task, as though nature itself is conspiring against you. Your mind begins to numb, and your body feels as though it's moving on its own, a mere vessel carrying you through the storm. The only thing that keeps you going is the thought that you cannot stop. If you stop, you may never get up again. But even that thought, that primal instinct for survival, seems like a fragile thread in a world that has turned cold and indifferent. The further you move from Damascus, the further you feel from any sense of hope. There's no sign of help, no relief, no salvation, just the endless march through the snow, each step more arduous than the last. You don't even know where the journey is taking you anymore. You only know that somehow you have to keep going. The path ahead is filled with uncertainty, but the only certainty is that you have no choice but to walk it. And so you march step by painful step into the unknown, hoping against hope that survival, just survival, is enough. The march is agonizing. You feel it in your muscles stiff from days of battle, and now from the brutal march through thick mud and snow. Every step is slower than the last. The cold gnaws at your skin, and the bitter wind cuts through your cloak, no protection from the growing chill of the winter. The sound of hooves and boots on the frozen ground is the only thing that breaks the silence each step, a reminder of the distance yet to cover, the struggle ahead. The weight of your pack seems to double with each passing mile, and you can hear the groans of the men around you as their fatigue catches up with them. Some stumble, others fall behind. The sound of their footsteps fading is the only indication that they may not make it much further. The roads are long and unforgiving, stretching endlessly into the horizon. You march not with hope, but with the quiet acceptance that survival is the only victory you can now claim. Each step becomes a battle in itself. Your legs feel as though they are wading through thick sludge, and every muscle in your body is sore from the relentless effort. The weight of your armor seems to grow heavier with every step, as if the very earth is conspiring to hold you back. You can barely feel your fingers anymore, the cold having crept so deeply into your bones that even the simplest of movements requires more effort than you can summon. The wind howls around you, a constant biting force that pierces through every layer you wear. Your cloak, once a shield against the elements, is now little more than a tattered piece of fabric that flaps uselessly in the wind, doing nothing to stop the cold from claiming you. You can hear the groans and labored breaths of the men around you, the sound of their exhaustion, nearly as deafening as the howling wind. Some soldiers stumble, their feet slipping in the snow, and ice their bodies already worn from the weeks of travel and combat. Others fall silent, their faces hollow and pale as they march in a stupor, moving on sheer instinct alone. Occasionally, one of them falters, collapsing onto the snow-covered ground, too tired to continue. But no one stops. There is no time for pity, no room for weakness. The march continues. The once proud army, once full of strength and purpose, now feels like a dying thing. It's hard to believe this is the same group that once set out with the expectation of victory, of glory. Now, it is simply a collection of broken men, trudging forward in silence, bound by a common fate. Some fall behind their footsteps, fading into the distance, leaving you with the uneasy feeling that they may never catch up. There's no help to give, no way to save them. You are all part of the same endless march, each step taking you further into the abyss of winter hunger and despair. The road stretches endlessly ahead, an expanse of frozen ground and thick, unrelenting snow that blurs the horizon. It's hard to know if the path is leading anywhere, or if it's merely a cruel illusion, another stretch of treacherous land with no destination in sight. The further you march, the harder it becomes to see the end. The thought of rest seems like a distant dream, an unreachable luxury that no one dares speak of anymore. You focus on the next step, and then the next. But it feels as if you're walking through a fog, stumbling in the dark, with no light to guide you. As you look around at your fellow soldiers, the realization settles in: you may not all make it. The men beside you, once strong and full of resolve, now seem as if they are barely hanging on. Their eyes are vacant, their bodies slouched, and their spirits have long since been broken by the brutal cold and the harsh conditions. The absence of conversation is striking a silence that stretches on like an unspoken agreement that nothing can be said to change the situation. There's no morale to be lifted here, no victory to rally behind, only survival. The cold continues to gnaw at you, creeping in, even as your body struggles to maintain its strength. You've long since stopped feeling the chill in your extremities. Your hands, feet, and face are numb, disconnected from your body, like appendages that belong to someone else. You've lost track of how many hours, maybe even days, you've been walking like this. Time is meaningless now. The only thing that matters is the march itself, each step one more desperate effort to put some distance between you and the nightmare that is closing in. It's not long before the first of the men begins to falter, their feet dragging through the snow as if their legs are made of lead. You see him trip, falling into the deep snow, struggling to rise again. There's no time to stop for him. You don't even look back. The group continues its march, the sounds of the trudging footsteps, the only reminder of what's being left behind. You wonder how many more will fall before the end of this miserable journey. The wind picks up again, and you brace yourself for its fury, pulling your cloak tighter around you, though it offers little protection. The snow continues to fall, a relentless barrage that covers everything in its path, turning the world into a blur of white and gray. The world seems to close in around you, the cold growing more suffocating with each step. Still you march. You don't think about the future because there is no future. You don't think about what lies ahead because you can't see it. All that matters is the here and now, the cold, the exhaustion, the endless march forward. There is no glory left, no honor, only survival. And that thought, grim as it is, keeps your legs moving, keeps you going, one step at a time, hoping against hope that somewhere, somehow, there might be a sliver of warmth waiting for you at the end. As the days blur together, you begin to realize the full scope of your predicament. The journey back to Europe is long, and no one knows if they will make it through. There's no sign of shelter, no warmth in sight, and the cold is relentless. The snow has become a constant companion, muffling the sounds of the world around you. The uncertainty gnaws at your mind. Will you survive? Will the men around you make it? Every man is a comrade, but the road ahead leaves little room for camaraderie. It's every man for himself. You see soldiers falling from exhaustion, their bodies too weakened to carry on. There's no time for mourning, only for moving forward, step by slow, painful step. The world feels as cold as the snow beneath your feet, and the only certainty is that each moment survived is one more step toward a future you can hardly see. The journey has only just begun, and already the fight for survival is all that matters. The days have become indistinguishable, a blur of snow ice and the unrelenting cold. You no longer track time by the sun's rise or fall. It's the rhythm of your own exhausted steps that marks the passing of hours. The cold is constant, a weight that presses down on you from all sides. It seeps into your bones, numbing your thoughts, dulling your senses. You can barely feel your fingers anymore, and your feet are becoming little more than painful stumps, each step a harsh reminder of your body's fragility. The snow continues to fall, its silent presence a reminder that the world is indifferent to your suffering. It wraps everything in a thick, unfeeling blanket, muting the sounds of the world around you. The once hopeful path back to Europe has turned into a maze of endless white, stretching out into nothingness. There is no direction, no sign of progress, only the ceaseless march forward. It is as though the landscape itself has conspired to make you feel lost, trapped in an endless cycle of struggle. In moments of rare clarity, your mind drifts to thoughts of what lies ahead. Will you make it through this nightmare? Will you live to see the warm embrace of home again? Every step forward feels like an attempt to outrun your fate, but the answer remains uncertain. The path before you is treacherous, and the road is littered with the fallen. You see them ahead of you, once proud soldiers, now reduced to shells of their former selves, stumbling and falling behind. Some collapse with no strength to rise, their bodies defeated by the cold and hunger. Their faces, once full of resolve, are now etched with the grim truth of their situation. There's no time to stop, no time to mourn. The realization settles in slowly. You are all in some way doomed. It's not a matter of if you'll survive, but who will. Every man around you is fighting for himself, for his own survival. The camaraderie that once united you all now feels like a distant memory. The shared mission of conquest and glory is gone. What remains is the raw, primal will to live. There is no longer any brotherhood in this retreat. The men around you are merely strangers, fellow travelers in the same desperate plight. You push forward, but it's becoming harder. Your legs feel heavier with every step, and the fatigue seems to deepen with each passing hour. The snow is up to your ankles now, then to your knees, and soon it seems as though you're walking through an endless sea of white. The once familiar sounds of marching boots and hooves have disappeared, replaced by the soft crunch of snow beneath your feet. Even the wind has quieted, leaving a strange, suffocating silence in its wake. The world feels hollow empty, as though you've been swallowed by it. You glance to your side and see one of the soldiers ahead of you stumble and fall, his body unable to keep up with the pace. He doesn't cry out. He doesn't beg for help. He simply sinks into the snow, his body too broken to go any further. No one stops. No one turns back. You keep moving, but a part of you somewhere deep inside feels the weight of his fate. It could be you next. It could be anyone. The cold, the exhaustion, the hunger, they don't discriminate. Everyone is vulnerable, and survival has become a cruel game of chance. The snow begins to fall more heavily now, and the sky grows darker, as if the heavens themselves are closing in on you. The wind picks up again, whipping through the trees and carrying the promise of more misery. The air is thick with the sting of ice, and your breath comes in shallow, rattling gasps. You feel it in your chest now, a heaviness that matches the growing sense of despair in your heart. Every step is a battle, and the weight of your own body feels unbearable. You want to rest, to stop for just a moment, but you know you can't. You know that if you stop, you may never get back up. The fear of collapse is a constant companion, and the only thing that keeps you moving is the instinct to survive. You look at the men around you, and their faces mirror your own exhaustion. Some are no longer marching. They are simply walking their heads down, their eyes dull with fatigue. Their minds seem far away, lost in the fog of their suffering. You wonder how long they can keep going, how long you can keep going. But there's no time to ask. There's no time to stop and think. And so you march step by slow, painful step through the snow, through the cold, through the endless void of learning. Every step forward is a triumph over your own body's resistance, a tiny victory against the crushing weight of failure and despair. You don't know how much further you can go, but you know there is no choice but to keep moving. The future is uncertain, and the end seems far off. But the only certainty you have is that you must survive. The road ahead is unclear, but you know this each moment. You stay on your feet is one more moment of defiance against the fate that awaits you. And with that small defiance, perhaps you can still make it through this nightmare. Without warning, the sky grows darker. The air, which had once been bitter but manageable, now carries a distinct, ominous chill. It's the kind of cold that settles deep into your bones, making every step feel heavier. The wind picks up howling through the trees, and you can feel the pressure in the air as though something dreadful is about to unfold. The first flurry of snow falls delicate at first, but quickly it turns into a torrential downpour of thick, swirling sheets. The landscape that once stretched out before you now vanishes behind a veil of white. The snow comes down so fast and thick that you can barely see your comrades ahead of you. The path beneath your feet disappears, swallowed up by the endless storm. The suddenness of the storm catches you off guard, and there's no time to prepare. No shelter, no place to hide. You pull your cloak tighter around you, but it offers little protection against the freezing winds and the heavy snow that is now piling up around you. The roads, once treacherous but passable, are now nothing more than an icy labyrinth, impossible to navigate. The world seems to disappear, reduced to a swirling sea of white and gray, with no end in sight. The wind roars, whipping the snow into a frenzy, stinging your face like tiny needles. Each gust seems to bite harder than the last, and the cold, already unbearable, now feels as if it's crawling under your skin. You try to push forward, but the snow makes every movement feel like a struggle, your legs sinking deeper with every step. The path you had followed just moments ago is now invisible, swallowed whole by the storm. The once familiar landscape is now a disorienting blur, a world of swirling white that feels both infinite and suffocating. You glance around, but the visibility is nearly non-existent. The shapes of your comrades have disappeared into the storm, their outlines lost behind a curtain of snow. You can no longer see the men walking beside you, their footsteps now muffled by the relentless onslaught of the storm. You strain your eyes, but all you can make out are the faintest shadows, figures barely visible through the thick snow. The cold wraps around you like a vice, its grip tightening with every passing moment. Your cloak is no match for the freezing wind, and it feels as though the storm is gnawing at your very soul. You pull it tighter, but the chill creeps in relentlessly, attacking every exposed inch of skin. You wish you could find shelter, some reprieve from the biting cold, but there is none. The storm is a living, breathing entity, a force of nature that shows no mercy. It surrounds you, suffocates you, and leaves you feeling as though the world itself is closing in around you. The snow continues to fall in thick sheets, reducing everything to an indistinct blur. You can no longer make out the road beneath your feet, and the path ahead seems to vanish into the abyss of the storm. The ground beneath you is treacherous, slippery, and uneven, and each step feels like a gamble. One wrong move, and you could find yourself lost in the vast white wilderness alone, unable to find your way. The soldiers around you are struggling too. You hear the soft crunch of boots in the snow, the low murmurs of men trying to maintain their footing. But it's clear that everyone is on the brink. The storm is relentless, showing no sign of abating. The weight of the snow on the ground is becoming a challenge in itself. Every movement seems slower, more labored. You feel it in your legs, in your body. Each step becomes harder, each breath more difficult to take. The snow, once a mild inconvenience, has transformed into an insurmountable wall. It piles up quickly, covering everything in its path, and soon even the small familiar landmarks that once guided you are gone, replaced by an endless sea of white. You are alone in a world of ice and snow, with no sense of direction, no sense of purpose. All you have is the bitter cold, the swirling storm, and the desperate will to keep moving forward. The wind howls, making it impossible to hear anything but its fury. The voices of your comrades are swallowed by the storm, leaving only the echo of your own thoughts, which are growing more frantic by the second. How long can you keep this up? How much further must you march through this endless nightmare? The weight of the unknown presses heavily on your chest, and with every step you feel yourself growing weaker, both physically and mentally. The path you once knew so well has disappeared. You no longer know which way to go, and the cold has numbed your ability to think clearly. The storm is all-consuming, and with every step, you realize that your survival depends not on strength, but on sheer determination to endure, to keep moving, no matter how heavy the snow falls or how sharp the wind cuts. And yet, as you push forward, the storm seems to mock you. Every step forward is met with a fresh wall of snow, a new gust of wind, as if nature itself is challenging your resolve. The road, once familiar and manageable, is now a winding maze of ice and snow, a battleground where survival is the only victory to be won. You press on your body, screaming for rest, but your will refuses to surrender. There is no other choice but to keep moving, even when every step seems more impossible than the last. And so you march through the storm, your vision clouded by snow and wind, your breath ragged and labored, your body trembling with exhaustion. The world around you has become a blur of white and gray, and yet the only certainty you hold on to is the need to survive. No longer fighting for glory or honor, you are simply fighting to stay alive. The storm rages on, and you struggle to keep your footing as the snow deepens. Each step feels as though you are wading through a thick, suffocating sea, the weight of your boots dragging you down. Your breath comes in short, visible bursts, the cold air burning your lungs as you push forward. Around you, the soldiers begin to falter. The horses, once strong and proud, now seem as worn out as their riders. Their hooves slip in the snow, and their bodies shiver uncontrollably from the cold. The men around you are no better. Some have stopped altogether, unable to move any longer. The cold is taking its toll, and it shows in the vacant stares of those around you. No one speaks. There are no words of encouragement, no shouts of rallying cries. There is only the bitter sound of boots trudging through the snow, the harsh winds whipping across the desolate landscape. You look to the side and see one soldier slip and fall, his body sinking into the snow. He makes no attempt to rise. There is no strength left in him to fight the storm. You want to help, but you know there's no time to stop. There are no provisions to offer him, no fire to warm him. The only thing that matters now is moving forward, even if it feels like you're walking towards certain doom. The storm shows no mercy. It howls louder, the wind cutting through you like 1,000 icy blades. Each gust seems to strip away any warmth left in your body, and the cold gnaws deeper with every passing second. You can feel the weight of the snow under your feet, each step a battle against its pull, as if the earth itself is trying to keep you grounded, trying to keep you from moving forward. But there's no turning back. You can't afford to stop. The world around you is a blur, the snow swirling around you, reducing everything to a haze of white and gray. The landscape, once familiar, is now an alien, suffocating expanse, and the road has disappeared beneath the relentless storm. The only thing you can hear now is the sharp whistle of the wind, the crunch of snow beneath your boots, and the ragged breathing of the men around you. They're struggling just like you, but there's no strength left to share. No one speaks. No one encourages. Everyone is lost in their own battle against the storm, each man consumed by the fight to keep moving, to keep alive. You look to your left and see another soldier stumble and fall, his legs buckling beneath him as the weight of the snow drags him down. He doesn't try to get up. There's no fight left in him, no strength to continue. His eyes are empty, his face pale and frozen. The cold has already claimed him. You want to help him, to pull him up, to give him a chance to survive. But there's no time. There's nothing you can do. The storm doesn't care. The storm will swallow you whole if you let it. Your heart aches as you watch him, but you know you must keep moving. The others have fallen behind too, their bodies fading into the snow, disappearing one by one as the cold overcomes them. You can hear their muffled cries, the soft thud of their bodies sinking into the snow. But there is no room for grief. The storm demands only one thing: survival. And it will not slow down to allow for anything else. Your legs feel heavier with each step, as though the snow has become a force unto itself, pulling at you, dragging you into its icy depths. Your breath comes in short, ragged gasps, each inhale a sharp, painful intake of cold air. Your chest burns with the effort, but you push on. There is nothing else to do. You feel the sting of frostbite creeping into your fingers, the cold seeping into your bones, but still you march. The numbness starts at your fingertips, working its way down your arms and into your chest. You know it won't be long before the cold robs you of even the strength to walk. But for now, you move one foot in front of the other, even though every step feels like a monumental effort. Around you, the others are still moving, but they are fading too. You see the same vacant stares, the same exhaustion in their faces. The storm has taken so much from them. They are ghosts of their former selves, soldiers who once stood tall, proud, but now reduced to nothing more than shadows, stumbling through the snow, driven only by the need to survive. The air is thick with the weight of that shared silent understanding. No one speaks of it, but you all know. The storm is claiming you one by one, and it is doing so without mercy. You glance back for just a moment, hoping to see some trace of the others, but the snow has covered their tracks. There is no sign of them, no indication of where they have gone. They have been swallowed by the storm, lost to the endless white. Your heart sinks, but you don't stop. You can't afford to. You wonder for just a fleeting second if you'll be next. If you will too, fade into the snow and be forgotten. The wind picks up again sharper this time, as though it knows you are weakening, as though it can feel the doubt creeping into your mind. But there's no time for doubt, no time for weakness. The storm has no mercy, and neither can you. The only thing that matters now is moving forward, keeping one foot in front of the other, no matter how much your body screams for rest. You continue on, and the world around you becomes smaller. The storm has closed in, and the vast expanse of snow seems to swallow you whole. There is no horizon, no end in sight, only the snow, the wind, and the brutal cold. Truth, survival, is all that matters now. The rest of the world has been lost to the storm. The battle is no longer about the crusade, about victory or glory. It is about the battle within, against the cold, against exhaustion, against the overwhelming fear that you may not survive this. And so, you keep going, step after agonizing step, as the storm rages on around you. The snowstorm grows fiercer with every passing moment, as if the sky itself has turned against you. The wind howls louder, pushing against you with a force that seems to slow your every movement. It's as if the storm is trying to swallow you whole. The snow now falls in thick, blinding sheets, covering the ground in a layer of white that seems to hide the very path beneath your feet. You can no longer see the men around you clearly. Shapes appear and disappear in the swirling snow, their outlines fading as the storm intensifies. Your clothing is soaked through the wet fabric, clinging to your skin and chilling you to the core. The cold has crept into every crevice, and you begin to wonder if you'll ever feel warmth again. Your fingers are stiff numb with the cold, and your legs feel like lead. Every step is a struggle, each movement requiring more and more effort. But there's no choice but to keep moving. The storm rages on relentless in its assault. You notice more men falling behind. Some stumble too exhausted to continue, while others collapse into the snow, unable to rise. Their bodies become one with the storm hidden beneath the snow that piles up faster than you can move. It's as if the snow is burying them, swallowing them whole, erasing them from the world. You push on, but each step becomes harder, more laborious. The storm shows no mercy, no reprieve. The storm, now a force of nature in itself, seems to have consumed everything in its path. The wind cuts deeper, slashing at your exposed skin, and you can feel your body's resistance weakening with each passing moment. The snow is so thick now that you can't even make out the figures of your comrades ahead of you. They are shadows fleeting and ghost-like, swallowed by the snowflakes that swirl relentlessly around you. Even your own breath is swallowed by the storm, lost in the tempest that surrounds you. Your cloak, once a shield against the cold, is now little more than a heavy weight against your already tired body. It flaps uselessly in the wind, drenched through with the wet snow. Your clothes cling to your body wet and freezing, and you wonder if you will ever be warm again. The cold has settled deep into your bones, gnawing at you from the inside out. Your fingers are stiff frozen and barely able to hold on to your weapon. The numbness creeping into your limbs makes it hard to move at all, and every step forward feels like you are fighting against a wall. The snow, now an enemy in itself. Around you, the soldiers are in the same state of exhaustion and misery. Some of them are barely able to keep their feet. Their faces are covered in a layer of frost, their eyes hollow with the strain of too many days of suffering. You hear more stumbling, more falling behind, but there's nothing you can do. The storm is too fierce. The path is too treacherous. Even if you wanted to help, you know you can't stop for long, not with the cold seizing your very soul and the storm relentlessly pushing you forward. You glance to the side, catching a glimpse of a soldier who has fallen behind. His body is lying half buried in snow, his chest barely rising as if the storm itself has claimed him. He doesn't move. He won't move. The snow is already covering him, erasing him from the world, leaving only the cold and the storm to mark his passing. His fate is sealed, and it's a bitter reminder that survival is no longer guaranteed. It's a cruel lottery. Some of you will make it through, and some of you will be buried beneath the weight of the snow, lost to the storm. The road ahead seems endless, stretching out into a blank white horizon. The world around you has shrunk down to the immediate snowstorm and the steps you are taking. There is no future, no past, only the present. Each moment, a struggle to keep going, to keep moving forward. The air is so thick with snow that it feels as if you are walking through a void. You cannot see where you're going, cannot see where the others have gone. The storm has swallowed everything. And yet there's no choice but to keep moving. To stop is to surrender. To give up is to join the fallen, to fade away into the snow, forgotten by all. You can feel the weight of this reality pressing down on you. There's no mercy to be had here. There is no warmth, no kindness from the storm, just the need to survive. With each step, your legs grow heavier, your body weaker, but you force yourself onward. Every movement feels like you are wading through a thick, suffocating sea. The snow clings to your boots, dragging you down further, making each step a monumental effort. But still, you move forward, each step a small victory, a defiance against the merciless storm. And then you notice more men faltering. Some are staggering, their heads lowered in defeat, their eyes glazed over their bodies, too exhausted to continue. Others fall without warning, their knees buckling beneath them, their strength finally giving way. They collapse into the snow, disappearing into the storm, their bodies lost to the relentless white. You can hear the soft thuds of their falls, but you cannot stop. There is no time to stop. The storm does not care if you fall. It will continue to rage on, indifferent to your struggle. Your breath comes as short, desperate gasp now, the cold air searing your lungs with each intake. It burns with the rawness of exhaustion, of a body pushed beyond its limits. You feel as though you're running on pure instinct now, a beast of survival, moving only because it has no other choice. Ahead of you, the storm swallows the world whole, turning it into an endless sea of white. There is no horizon, no end in sight. The men you once knew, the comrades you once fought beside, have become shadows, fading into the snow. They have joined the fallen, their footprints quickly covered by the snow, as if they never existed. But still you march. You must. There is nothing else. The storm is a force you cannot control. The snow, the cold, the wind. It all seems to mock you, a reminder that the world is indifferent to your suffering. But you continue, step after step, because survival is the only thing left to fight for. The storm may consume the world around you, but you will keep fighting. You will keep moving. You must. The cold takes hold with an iron grip, and soon you realize it isn't just exhaustion that is threatening to overtake you. It's frostbite. You can feel it creeping in, starting in your fingers and toes, the skin becoming numb, then turning painfully cold. Each movement sends a shock of pain through your limbs, but you push through it knowing that if you stop now, you may never start again. The soldiers around you are beginning to succumb one by one. Some fall to the ground, unable to continue. Others try to fight, but their bodies are no match for the relentless assault of the storm. You glance at one man ahead of you. His fingers are frozen, his lips blue from the cold. His steps grow slower, and then he stops altogether, falling into the snow without a sound. He won't get back up. There's no room for sorrow, no time to mourn the fallen. The only thing that matters now is survival. You keep moving, but the storm is relentless, and the world feels as though it's shrinking, closing in around you. You're trapped in a world of white, a never-ending storm of snow and cold, and all you can do is keep walking, hoping that somehow, just somehow, you'll make it through. The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear. The storm is here, and it is not going to stop until it has taken everything it can. The cold doesn't care who you are, what you've done, or where you've been. It is a force that takes with brutal indifference, leaving nothing in its wake but frost-bitten bodies and broken spirits. And as the storm rages on, you realize that survival isn't just about continuing forward. It's about withstanding the unrelenting cold, the constant barrage of nature's fury. And in this fight, only the strongest, the most stubborn, the most determined will emerge on the other side. The wind howls louder as if it senses your struggle, pushing against you with greater force. Every breath you take feels like inhaling sharp needles, and your lungs ache with the effort to fill them with the freezing air. The pain in your limbs is unbearable, but you push through it, focusing only on the rhythm of your steps, one foot in front of the other. It's the only thing you can do, the only thing left to you. But the frostbite is spreading. You can feel it creeping farther, climbing up your legs, wrapping around your chest, numbing you from the inside out. Your fingers stiff and frozen, barely grip your weapon anymore. You try to curl them, but they don't respond. They are cold, brittle, almost like something that doesn't belong to you anymore. And yet you keep moving. You look around at the men still trudging along, their faces masked in ice, their bodies swaying with exhaustion. The storm shows no mercy, and neither do their bodies. One by one, soldiers drop behind, their lives consumed by the cold. You can hear their faint cries for help, but they are quickly lost to the wind, swallowed by the storm. Some of them fall without a sound, collapsing face first into the snow, their bodies buried under the weight of the ever-falling snowflakes. Others try to rise, their movements slow and uncoordinated, but the effort is futile. They stagger for a few more steps before falling, their bodies sinking into the snow, leaving nothing but their tracks to mark their passage. You want to stop, to check on them, to give them a chance, but you know better. You've seen too many men succumb to the cold. The world around you is a blur of white, and you have no time to waste. Every second counts. If you stop, if you slow down, the same fate will befall you. The storm does not care who you are. It is as indifferent to your suffering as it is to the suffering of the men who have fallen behind. You glance ahead and see a small group of soldiers stumbling, their steps unsteady. Their faces are hollow, their eyes clouded with fatigue and pain. They look at you, but there's no recognition in their gaze. They are lost in the storm, each man wrapped in his own battle against the cold. They are too far gone to offer encouragement, too far gone to help each other. They are just surviving, barely clinging to the hope that somehow they can make it through. The snow falls harder, thicker, blanketing everything in a thick, suffocating veil. The wind picks up again, swirling around you, pushing you back with all its might. You strain against it, leaning into the wind, but it only forces you further off course. The storm has become a beast in itself, a creature of pure destruction, determined to swallow you whole. The cold is no longer just an external threat. It has become an enemy inside you. It's a hunger that gnaws at your insides, a force that drives you to keep moving even when your body screams for rest. You feel it in your very bones, the ache of the cold that eats away at you little by little until you're not sure if you're still alive or if the storm has already claimed you. But you can't stop. You won't stop. Not now. Not when the end feels so close. With each step, the world grows smaller, the storm more suffocating. You are lost in the endless white, swallowed by the unforgiving storm, but you keep moving. The snow piles up around you inch by inch, burying the road beneath your feet, but you continue to push forward. The only sound now is the crunch of your boots in the snow and the deafening wind that fills your ears. The storm is closing in, and the weight of it presses down on you. It is all you know now. The pain, the cold, the emptiness, these are the only constants in your world. But you keep walking. You have to keep walking, because the moment you stop, the storm will claim you, and you will be nothing but another body lost to the endless white. The storm rages on, but the true battle has already begun. It is no longer against the elements, but against the weakening bodies of the soldiers who are beginning to fall behind one by one. The relentless cold, the hunger, and the exhaustion have taken their toll, stripping away the strength of even the most seasoned warriors. You can see it in their faces, the hollow eyes, the slackened jaws, the once proud shoulders now drooping with defeat. The sounds of the retreat are different now. Where once there were the steady rhythms of boots marching in unison, now there is a scattered shuffle broken by the occasional stumble or the slow collapse of a soldier. Their movements are slow, deliberate, as if they are dragging themselves through thick mud instead of snow. Every step is harder than the last. Their bodies are giving in one by one to the unforgiving toll of the cold. You feel the ache in your own body, the stiffness in your legs, but you force yourself to keep moving. The others have fallen behind, and you know there's no room for anyone to stop. The world around you has grown quieter. The howling wind, now a distant hum in the background of the soldiers' labored breaths. The storm rages on, but it's no longer the storm that is the greatest threat. It's the men themselves, their bodies failing, their spirits faltering. The unity that once defined the retreat has broken down, replaced by an agonizing individual struggle for survival. There's no longer the sense of camaraderie, no rallying cries or words of encouragement. The only sound is the sickening shuffle of boots through the snow, the soft thuds of soldiers dropping to their knees or sinking into the white abyss, their bodies too weak to continue. You glance back, your eyes briefly catching a few of the fallen. One soldier, a young man with a face still fresh with the vigor of youth, has collapsed into the snow, his body twitching slightly as though fighting against the cold. But there's no fight left in him. His hands are stiff, his legs unresponsive, and his chest rises with the shallow, gasping breaths of someone too far gone to survive much longer. His eyes are wide-locked in a vacant stare that reflects the emptiness of the world around him. He will never rise again. Your gaze moves quickly forward, unwilling to dwell on the fate of your comrades. You know better than to stop to show pity. The storm, relentless and uncaring, waits for no one. There's no time to grieve, no time to help. Every second wasted is another step closer to your own end. So you push on step by agonizing step, each one feeling heavier than the last. The weight of your pack, the cold seeping into your very bones, all contribute to the crushing burden. Your limbs ache as though they have turned to stone, and the pain in your feet frozen numb and raw screams for release. The horizon, once an ever-present guide, has disappeared into the void of white. The snow falls thicker now, blotting out all sense of direction. The path has long been lost, and now the very world around you feels like a frozen prison, a never-ending expanse of white and gray that stretches endlessly in all directions. The cold cuts into your skin like 1,000 daggers, and your body fights for warmth with each shiver, each breath. Ahead, you see more soldiers stumbling, their movements slow and uncoordinated, as if their bodies are no longer their own. They drag their feet, their heads lowered in a mix of fatigue and resignation. Some try to walk with what little strength remains, but their bodies refuse to cooperate. One soldier collapses beside you, his body sliding into the snow without a sound, his eyes glazed over in exhaustion. He won't be the last. The retreat is turning into a race against the storm, and nature's wrath is winning. The thought of stopping nags at the back of your mind, but you push it away. There is no room for weakness here. No room for hesitation. The only thing that matters now is forward. Moving, surviving. You know that if you stop, you may never start again. The cold will claim you, just as it has claimed so many before you. The men who fall behind, those who succumb to the storm, become nothing more than forgotten shadows in the snow. They are erased by the storm, swallowed whole by the white. Their presence, nothing more than a fleeting memory, a grim reminder of what awaits anyone who slows down. You force yourself to focus, to shut out the exhaustion, the numbness, the pain. The battle isn't just against the cold or the storm, it's against yourself. Your body wants to stop. It wants to surrender. But your will is all that remains. With each step, you will yourself forward. The soldiers around you are faltering, but you won't. Not yet. The pain is unbearable. The weight of the world pressing down on your shoulders, but you push through it, knowing that every step taken is a step closer to survival. There is nothing else left but survival. And so you march on, driven by the faintest glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, there is an end to this nightmare. The storm may rage, the cold may gnaw, at your flesh, and the snow may bury you all, but for now you walk, step by step, forward through the relentless chaos of wind and snow, past the men who fall and fade into the storm, knowing that survival is the only thing that matters. The rest has been forgotten. The cold becomes a living thing, creeping into every joint, every sinew. It begins in your fingers as if the frost is working its way up your arms, turning them to ice. Your toes are next cold and numb, the sensation creeping up your legs. You can feel the frostbite setting in, taking what little warmth you have left. The pain is sharp when you try to move your fingers or shift your legs, but it is nothing compared to the slow, insidious creep of the cold as it drains away your strength. Around you, the soldiers are suffering the same fate. You see one man stop and stare down at his hands, frozen and stiff, the tips of his fingers now black with frostbite. He tries to shake them to make his fingers move, but they won't. Another soldier stumbles and falls to his knees, his toes having long since frozen beyond saving. He tries to stand, but collapses back into the snow, his body too numb to fight against the storm any longer. You know deep down that he won't get up again. The storm will claim him, as it has claimed so many others. The cold presses in a relentless enemy that doesn't just freeze the body, but consumes the very will to fight. You feel it gnawing at your bones, seeping deep into your core. It starts with your fingers, which no longer feel like part of you. They are stiff and unresponsive. The icy grip of frostbite slowly spreading inch by inch up your arms. Your arms, once strong and steady, now feel like lifeless weights struggling to keep moving. The numbness is creeping up your legs too, and with it comes a dull, sharp ache that radiates through your body with each step you take. You try to shift your feet, but your toes are too cold, too numb to feel. And when you try to move, pain lances through your body as if your very cells are protesting the movement. The sharp sting of the cold gnaws at you, yet it is the insidious numbness that is worse, the cold creeping inch by inch until it feels like you've already surrendered to it. Around you, the others are fighting the same battle. You can hear the soft grunts of pain, the labored breaths of men whose bodies are slowly betraying them. One soldier stumbles and falls, unable to regain his footing. He crashes into the snow, his face buried in the whiteness, and for a moment he lies still. When he tries to rise, his limbs are too stiff, too frozen to obey. His fingers, which only moments ago had gripped his sword, are now frozen stiff and black at the tips. He stares at them, trying to move them, to force them to work, but the frost has already claimed him. He is no longer a soldier, just another casualty of the storm. You look away, not because you want to, but because there is no room to mourn. The cold doesn't care for your grief. It doesn't pause for your losses. It only presses on, grinding away at your body, your spirit. Another soldier collapses beside you, his knees buckling beneath him, as the frostbite in his toes finally takes its toll. He tries to rise, but his legs are too stiff to carry him. His body falls back into the snow with a soft thud, and you know without looking that he won't be getting up. Not today. Not ever again. The sound of the storm drowns everything else. The wind howls, pushing the snow harder as though trying to bury everything in its path. The only sound you can hear now is the rhythmic crunch of your boots in the snow, the faint, desperate breaths of your comrades, and the occasional stumble of a man too weak to continue. The path ahead is almost entirely invisible, swallowed by the storm, and the road has become a cruel, endless tunnel of white. Each step is a struggle. Each step feels like it could be your last. You swallow hard, your throat tight with the bitter cold. The ache in your legs is unbearable now, and the pain of frostbite makes every movement feel like an eternity. But there is no choice. The storm won't stop, and neither will you. The soldiers around you are falling one by one, and with each fallen comrade, the reality sinks deeper. The path is filled with the echoes of those lost to the storm, their frozen bodies swallowed by the white, leaving nothing but the footprints of the living slowly marching forward, even though they know it might be futile. The storm rages with a fierce fury, and the cold is unyielding. Every step forward is harder than the last, but you force your feet to move, knowing that if you stop, you too will be buried beneath the snow. You glance over at the soldiers who remain with you. Their faces, once full of hope, are now etched with exhaustion, their eyes empty. There is no hope left in their expressions, just the raw instinct to survive. But the storm is indifferent. It doesn't care for their survival or yours. It's simply there, a brutal force of nature consuming everything in its wake. You push forward, the pain in your limbs almost too much to bear. You focus on your steps, on the breath coming in shallow bursts, and the bitter, relentless cold that tries to steal your very will to live. But you won't stop. You can't. Not yet. There's no place for weakness. Only survival. The storm will continue to rage. The cold will continue to claim the men around you. But you will march. You will fight it as long as you can. The army that marches now is not the same one that set out from Europe. Gone are the proud knights, the men who once stood tall and confident in the face of battle. Now, those same knights march with slumped shoulders, their armor weighed down, not just by the snow and the freezing cold, but by the crushing realization that victory is no longer within their grasp. Their eyes are empty, their faces gaunt, their spirits broken. The glittering armor they once wore with pride is now tarnished, dulled by the grime and the endless slog through the snow. You look around, and see the same weariness in every face. The proud men who once fought for glory, for honor, now struggle to put one foot in front of the other. They are no longer soldiers. They are survivors, and even that seems like an impossibility. The hunger, the cold, the exhaustion have stripped them of everything but the instinct to keep moving to survive. But for how long? The question lingers in the air, unanswered. You try not to think about it. There is no use in wondering about the future when the present is a battle in itself. The only thing that matters now is the next step, the next breath, the next moment. The rest, glory, honor. Even the idea of survival itself seems so far away, distant, and unattainable. The storm is all-consuming, and the road ahead, if there even is one, is long, cold, and uncertain. The journey back to Europe feels longer than the retreat from Damascus itself. The once proud army, battered, frozen, and broken, drags itself through the final stretch of the return journey, each soldier weary beyond belief. There is no fanfare, no cheers of triumph. Instead, there is only silence, broken only by the occasional groan of a soldier, the crunch of boots in the snow, and the faint, bitter feeling of failure hanging over every step. As the Crusaders approach their homeland, the landscape offers no comfort. The cold, the exhaustion, the defeat they all cling to, the men like a heavy fog. They are no longer warriors returning from battle. They are survivors of a failed mission, and the weight of that failure is palpable. When the Crusaders finally reach Europe, their expectations of honor and recognition are replaced with a cold reception. The people who once cheered their departure now look at them with judgment and scorn. Whispers of failure circulating faster than the wind itself. The march feels endless, the distance between them and Europe stretching far beyond the physical miles. Every step forward is another reminder of what they've lost. The army that once marched with pride banners flying high and hearts full of hope now moves like a shadow of its former self. The weight of defeat presses down on each soldier, their bodies weary, their minds numb from the ordeal. They have been broken by the cold, the hunger, and the brutality of the retreat. There is no strength left to celebrate or even acknowledge the end of the journey. All that remains is the long, slow march home. A home that feels less like a place of comfort and more like an uncertain destination. The wind cuts through the soldiers as they make their way back, as if it too is a reminder of their failure. It howls in their ears, drowns out any remaining thoughts of hope, and makes every step feel even heavier. The silence between the men is deafening, broken only by the occasional groan of a soldier too tired to keep moving, the clinking of armor and weapons that once served them in battle, now a hollow sound, a far cry from the clamor of war. As they approach the familiar shores of Europe, there's no sense of relief, no joyous reunion. The land they had once set out to conquer now feels foreign and cold, a stark contrast to the warmth and glory they had imagined. There is no cheering crowd to greet them, no celebrations of their bravery. Instead, they are met with silence, a cold, indifferent silence that feels as though it's been waiting for them all along. The roads they traveled on during their departure are now barren and unwelcoming, and the cities that had once seemed full of promise now seem distant and indifferent. The soldiers are no longer conquerors, they are survivors, and that truth weighs heavily on them. As they reach the heart of Europe, the reception they once dreamed of becomes a cruel reality. The people who had once waved them off with promises of victory now turn their backs, their eyes filled with judgment and disdain. Whispers of failure spread faster than the wind itself, poisoning the air with accusations and scorn. Those who had once seen the Crusaders as heroes now view them as failures, their mission a disaster, their leaders impotent. The same faces that had been filled with pride and hope now look away in disappointment, leaving the soldiers to face the harsh truth of their failure alone. The streets, once filled with the promises of glory, are now silent. The people who had once celebrated their departure now view the returning Crusaders as an embarrassment. The banners that had flown proudly in foreign lands are now tattered reminders of a mission that ended in humiliation. There is no warm embrace from home, only the bitter sting of judgment. The Crusaders had set out to secure honor, to claim a victory that would echo through history. But instead, they return empty-handed. Their reputation shattered, their names stained with failure. The kings, once revered as leaders of great campaigns, now stand in silence, their crowns tarnished by the weight of their defeat. The soldiers, once proud knights of Christendom, are now reduced to shadows of their former selves, their spirits broken by the long, painful retreat and the hopelessness of their return. There is no recognition of their suffering, no acknowledgement of the battles fought not in the fields, nor against nature itself. Only the harsh reality of their failure remains hanging over them like a cloud that refuses to lift. In this moment, the Crusaders are not seen as warriors. They are seen as men who lost everything, who failed in the eyes of their people and their gods. The long journey back has shown them one thing: victory was never truly theirs to claim. Louis VII and Conrad III, two men who had once stood side by side, are now at odds. The failure of the Second Crusade has shattered any sense of unity, and the kings who should have led their men in solidarity now turn on each other. The accusations start immediately. Louis VII points an accusing finger at Conrad III, blaming him for poor strategic decisions that led to their downfall. It was your failure to secure proper supplies. Louis spits bitterly, his voice raw with the weight of blame. You allowed our men to starve, to freeze in the snow. Conrad III, his face flushed with the heat of anger, and shame counters vehemently. Your leadership was the true failure, he snarls. You were too weak to maintain control over the army. You allowed morale to falter, and your indecisiveness cost us dearly. The king's once allies in the pursuit of glory now find themselves caught in a bitter game of blame, each man attempting to deflect responsibility onto the other. The soldiers who had once followed their leaders with hope and trust now watch in dismay as their kings engage in this petty destructive finger pointing. The unity that had once held the crusade together has disintegrated, leaving only the ruins of pride and the bitter reality of failure. There is no leadership now, only two men trying to salvage their reputations at the expense of the other. The accusations fly thick and fast, each word like a dagger aimed at the heart of the other. Louis VII's eyes burn with anger, his frustration boiling over as he turns toward Conrad III, accusing him of tactical blunders that led to their losses. You should have known better, Louis snarls. You failed to anticipate the conditions, the logistical challenges. You were too focused on your own plans to see the bigger picture. Conrad III, not one to back down counters with equal venom. You were the one who hesitated, Louis. You allowed hesitation to sink into the ranks. While you wasted time dithering, our men grew weaker, colder, and hungrier. Your indecisiveness cost us precious time and lives. Their words, bitter and sharp, echo through the ranks, and the soldiers once inspired by these men now feel the weight of the breakdown in leadership. The unity that had once held the crusade together has dissolved. What had been a single mission of faith and glory is now reduced to nothing more than a series of accusations and blame, a childish back and forth between two men who by all rights should be standing side by side, united in their shared responsibility. The soldiers watch in stunned silence, some shaking their heads in disbelief. They had followed these men into battle with hope and determination, believing in the cause they fought for. But now their faith in their leaders is shattered. The kings, the very men they had trusted, are now turning their backs on each other, using their soldiers as scapegoats for their own failure. The bitter reality of their defeat becomes impossible to ignore. There is no longer any honor in this crusade, only disgrace and division. The arguments between Louis VII and Conrad III become louder, more heated, as the blame continues to shift back and forth. The soldiers shift uncomfortably, glancing at each other, but saying nothing. Their thoughts, however, are clear. What was once a noble cause, a shared goal of reclaiming the Holy Land, now seems like a cruel joke. The men who led them have failed them, not just in their leadership, but in their moral authority. The soldiers now find themselves questioning not only their kings, but the very purpose of the crusade itself. As the days pass, the public squabbling between the kings grows more intense, and their failures become more apparent. The camp is rife with tension, and the soldiers who have already endured so much find themselves torn between loyalty to their leaders and the harsh reality of their situation. There is no sense of camaraderie left, just the cold, empty feeling of betrayal. What was supposed to be a historic campaign for the glory of Christendom has turned into a disgrace, and the men who once swore to lead them to victory now seem more concerned with protecting their own reputations. Louis VII and Conrad III, in their desperate attempts to deflect blame, have not only lost the trust of their soldiers, but have stripped away whatever honor remained in their once heroic cause. The Crusaders, once united under a common banner, are now broken, divided by the failure of their mission and the failure of their leaders. The soldiers are left to carry the weight of this humiliation, their pride and their sense of purpose shattered. The political scandal is not just about the loss of land, but the loss of faith, and the leaders who should have guided them through the storm have instead plunged them into deeper turmoil. The Crusaders' reputation is forever tarnished, and the men who once marched for glory now walk with their heads bowed, knowing that the failure of the Second Crusade is not just a defeat, it's a stain that will never be erased. The Crusaders who had fought together in the heat of battle now stand divided. The once unbreakable bond between them has been shattered by the failure of their mission and the finger-pointing that followed. The camaraderie that had been forged in the heat of war now feels like a distant memory. What was once a unified force marching toward a common goal is now a fractured group, each soldier trying to find a way to place blame for the disaster that has befallen them. The accusations between Louis VII and Conrad III ripple through the ranks, reaching the ears of the soldiers. Some begin to point fingers at their fellow Crusaders, blaming one another for poor decisions or mistakes made during the campaign. The unity that was once so strong has dissolved into mistrust and division. The Crusaders, who had been bound together by their mission and their faith, now find themselves fractured, each man left to question the motives and actions of those around him. As the Crusaders return to Europe, they are not greeted with pride or glory, but with shame. Their failure is on full display, and there is no way to hide from it. The accusations that fly between the kings are mirrored in the accusations that arise among the soldiers. Everyone is looking for someone else to blame, no one willing to accept their own share of the responsibility. The once mighty kings Louis VII of France and Conrad III of Germany, who had set out with high hopes of victory and glory, now find themselves facing the harsh reality of political ruin. The failure of the Second Crusade has stained their reigns and shattered their reputations. As the Crusaders return to Europe, the whispers of their incompetence begin to grow louder, seeping through the corridors of power and reaching the ears of those who had once been their allies. The nobility who had once supported the campaign with fervor now begin to question the wisdom of their king's decisions. The lords and barons who had lent their forces to the crusade are quick to turn their backs, using the failure as a weapon to weaken the authority of the kings. Political rivals who had waited for an opportunity to challenge their rule now seize upon the disaster of the crusade, using it to stir discontent and erode the confidence the people once had in their monarchs. Louis VII and Conrad III, desperate to maintain their thrones, find themselves embroiled in a bitter struggle for their legitimacy. They try to deflect the blame, each king pointing fingers at the other, each claiming that the failure was the fault of poor leadership or bad strategy. But their defenses ring hollow. The truth of the Crusade's failure is too stark, too painful to deny, and no amount of political maneuvering can undo the damage that has been done. The political landscape of Europe shifts as the failure of the Second Crusade becomes a tool for rivals seeking to undermine the kings. The once great monarchs who had led their armies with the promise of victory now stand as symbols of weakness and misfortune. Their credibility is shattered, their power eroded by the undeniable truth that their mission was an utter failure. The political turmoil, the riot that follows, threatens to unravel their reigns as the nobility and common people alike begin to lose faith in their leadership. The Crusaders, too, are caught in the fallout. Once hailed as heroes, they now stand as reminders of a lost cause. The armor they wore with pride now feels heavy with shame, their names tarnished by the disastrous outcome of the campaign. The soldiers who had once believed they were fighting for a noble cause now return to Europe as broken men. Their faces, once filled with determination, are now etched with exhaustion and regret. They are no longer the knights of glory. They are reminders of the bitter truth that the crusade has failed, and with it the dream of conquest and honor. The public perception of the Crusaders shifts dramatically. No longer seen as champions of Christendom, they are now regarded with disdain and disappointment. The once proud knights who had marched for glory are now objects of pity and ridicule. Their struggle is forgotten, replaced by the image of failure. The weight of that failure clings to them like the snow they trudged through. And with each step they take on their return, they feel the bitter sting of their lost mission. The political and social storm of accusations that follows the failure of the crusade leaves no one untouched. Louis VII and Conrad III are left to fight for their thrones, but the cracks in their reigns are too deep to repair. The division among their ranks has only grown wider, and the storm of political scandal threatens to consume them both. They cannot escape the truth. The Second Crusade has been a disaster, and no amount of defense or rhetoric can erase the stain it has left on their legacies. The soldiers who return to their homes carry the weight of the failure with them. Their names are now linked to the catastrophic campaign, their once proud reputations forever tainted. The shame of their defeat is not easily forgotten, and the soldiers who had once dreamed of glory now face a future clouded with uncertainty. The bonds of brotherhood that had been forged in battle have unraveled, and the future feels bleak. their place in history forever marked by the bitter failure of the Crusade. The once proud army that set out for Damascus has been shattered, and the truth of their failure weighs heavily on them. As the Crusaders return to their homelands, they are no longer the warriors they once were. The idealism that had driven them to fight in the Holy Land is gone, replaced by the cold, harsh reality of their defeat. The retreat from Damascus is not remembered as a noble defeat, but as a bitter failure. The men who once marched with their heads held high now walk with their shoulders slumped, their faces drawn and weary. The lessons of failure have sunk in deep. The hope that had once burned bright within them has been extinguished by the storm, the cold, and the endless suffering. The soldiers who had once fought for glory now return to Europe with little more than the memory of what could have been. There is no redemption in their return, only the crushing weight of a mission that ended in disaster. The dream of conquest is gone, and with it, any sense of pride or accomplishment. The journey back to their homelands is a long and silent one. Each soldier trapped in the weight of their own thoughts, each step heavier than the last. The once proud banners that had been held high in the name of glory now hang limp and tattered. The camaraderie that had existed between them, born from the shared hardships and the hope of reclaiming the Holy Land, has dissolved into isolation. They are no longer a unified force, but a broken group of men scattered by their defeat. The soldiers, once filled with dreams of honor and victory, now find themselves in a world that looks at them with pity rather than admiration. As they pass through the towns and villages, the familiar faces that once cheered them on now avoid their eyes. The proud knights and warriors who had set out with such hope now walk with heads bowed, their bodies physically and emotionally exhausted. The streets, which had once been filled with anticipation of their return, now seem to echo with silence. There are no cheers, no welcoming crowds, only the sound of their boots on the cold, hard ground, punctuated by the occasional sigh of resignation or groan of pain. The soldiers, whose faces were once full of fire and determination, now wear the hollow expression of those who have seen their dreams crumble before their eyes. The once steely resolve that had driven them forward has faded into a quiet, weary acceptance. What had once seemed like a noble cause, a fight for a righteous purpose, now feels like a cruel illusion. The failure of the crusade has left them with nothing but broken promises and shattered pride. Their minds are full of the bitter reality of defeat, the endless hardships, the failed siege, the countless lives lost, and the crushing cold that they could not overcome. The men who had once fought for glory now question the very purpose of their struggle. Was it all worth it? Was the loss of so many lives, the destruction of so many dreams, ever truly justified? And yet there is no room for answers. There is no time for reflection, no space to mourn what has been lost. The soldiers return to their families, but there is no joy in their reunion. The homes they return to seem distant, as though they no longer belong. The smiles of their loved ones feel like a cruel reminder of all that has been taken from them, a reminder that they have returned not as heroes, but as broken men. They are no longer the warriors they once were. The world that had once welcomed them as saviors now views them as failures. Their journey a bitter chapter in history that will soon be forgotten. The weight of failure hangs over them, a constant reminder that the dream of conquest has been lost forever. The Holy Land remains out of reach, and with it any hope of redemption. The soldiers, once filled with hope, now find themselves wondering what their lives mean in the aftermath of such a disaster. The dream of glory, of honor, has turned to ash, and the long journey back to Europe has only deepened the sting of what they could never achieve. Their return is not the end of their suffering, but the beginning of a new kind of struggle, one that will be fought not on the battlefield, but within their own hearts and minds. For the Crusaders who march back to Europe, there will be no triumph, no celebration. Only the quiet, painful realization that they have given everything for a cause that was doomed from the start. The failure of the Second Crusade reverberates beyond the soldiers who fought in it. The Crusader movement, once full of fervor and ambition, begins to weaken. The hope that had driven the initial wave of crusades fades, replaced by doubt and disillusionment. The vision of a unified Christendom, marching to reclaim the Holy Land, has fractured, and now the leaders and soldiers who once rallied together for the cause are left scattered, broken, and uncertain. The political landscape in Europe begins to shift. The failure to achieve their goal in the Holy Land has damaged the credibility of the Crusaders, and their once strong alliances are now fractured. The power of the Church, which had so strongly supported the crusade, begins to waver as well. The Crusader movement, once seen as a unifying force, now faces increasing internal division and external skepticism. There are no great victories to be celebrated, only a long trail of defeat, and the painful realization that the movement's ideals may have been flawed from the start. The once unified Crusader movement begins to crumble in the wake of the Second Crusade's failure. The idealistic fervor that had ignited the flames of earlier crusades now fades into a grim reality, and the dream of a victorious Christendom marching to reclaim the Holy Land feels more distant than ever. What was once a collective ambition, shared by knights, kings, and peasants alike, now fractures into a collection of disillusioned individuals, each carrying the burden of their shattered hopes. The soldiers who had set out with such optimism now return to their homes not as champions, but as men beaten by the cold, the hunger, and the unforgiving storm of failure. The leaders, too, are no longer the figures of authority they once were. Their credibility has been irreparably damaged. The kings and nobles who had pledged their loyalty to the cause now find their own positions at risk. Louis VII and Conrad III, once seen as the heads of the Crusader effort, are no longer viewed as strong, decisive leaders. The failure of their mission casts a shadow over their rule, and the power that once seemed so solid now begins to waver. Their supporters, once loyal, now question their decisions, their ability to lead, and even their right to govern. The political consequences are swift and unforgiving. As news of the Crusades' failure spreads, rivals within the courts of Europe see an opportunity to challenge the legitimacy of the kings and nobles involved. Those who had once been staunch supporters of the Crusader cause now step back, unwilling to associate themselves with the growing scandal. Political alliances shift, and the strength of the Crusader movement weakens under the weight of failure. The power of the Church, which had once endorsed the Crusades with fervor, now faces increasing skepticism from both the people and the political elite. The Pope and the clergy who had called for the campaign are forced to grapple with the fallout their authority questioned in light of the disastrous results. The failure of the Second Crusade highlights a deeper flaw in the movement, a flaw that had been buried beneath the lofty ideals and the promises of glory. The Crusades had been sold as a way to unite Christendom, to fulfill a divine mandate. But the painful reality of the Second Crusade reveals just how fractured the Christian world truly is. The vision of a unified, powerful Christendom, united in purpose, is shattered. And instead, the Crusader movement becomes a symbol of broken dreams. What had once seemed like a righteous cause is now seen as a costly and futile endeavor. The movement begins to fracture from within as doubts creep into the hearts of those who once believed so strongly in its mission. The Crusaders, having faced defeat, are left questioning their faith, their cause, and their leaders. The unity that had held them together is lost, replaced by infighting, blame, and disillusionment. No longer are they seen as noble knights fighting for a sacred purpose. They are seen as failures, their names forever linked to a campaign that ended in disaster. As the political landscape shifts, the Crusader movement is left weakened and vulnerable. There are no great victories to celebrate, no victories that can cover up the bitter truth of defeat. The ideals that once inspired so many have now become a painful reminder of what could have been. The Second Crusade, rather than marking a new chapter in the history of Christendom, becomes a cautionary tale, a tale of how ambition, hope, and faith can be crushed by the unyielding force of failure. The Crusaders who return home are not the heroes they imagined themselves to be. They are broken men carrying with them the weight of lost dreams, lost honor, and a future clouded with doubt. Upon returning to Europe, the Crusaders are greeted with something far from what they had imagined. There are no parades, no triumphant cheers from the crowds. Instead, they face a cold and unforgiving reception, greeted not with honor, but with shame. The hopes of victory of glory have turned to dust, and the men who had once marched with pride now return as symbols of failure. The air is thick with disappointment as the Crusaders make their way back, their armor tarnished, their spirits broken. The journey that was supposed to mark the zenith of their purpose now feels like a wasted effort, a painful chapter to be forgotten. What should have been a proud return home is instead clouded with the bitter realization that their mission has ended in disaster. But the shame is not evenly distributed. The two kings who had led this ill-fated campaign quickly begin to turn on one another. The tension between Louis VII of France and Conrad III of Germany, once allies in this crusade, now grows into an open rift. Louis VII, his voice raw with frustration and anger, accuses Conrad III of poor decisions and lack of foresight. Your failure to secure supplies and provisions was the beginning of our downfall. Louis spits his eyes, narrowing with disdain. You failed to see the dangers of the terrain, the strength of the enemy, and in doing so, you condemned us all to suffer. Conrad III, his pride bruised, retorts with equal venom. It was your indecisiveness that led to this. You hesitated when decisions had to be made. You failed to lead when our men needed direction the most. His voice shakes with a mix of anger and shame. Our soldiers starved, froze, and died because you could not rally them, could not inspire them. You let morale collapse. You were weak. The blame game has begun in full force, and neither king is willing to shoulder the responsibility alone. Each man points his finger at the other, determined to absolve himself of the consequences of their failure. Their accusations echo throughout the ranks, and soon the soldiers who had once looked to these kings for leadership begin to see the cracks in their authority. What had once been a unified force of men marching together for a common cause is now a divided, disillusioned group. Each soldier, burdened with the failure of the crusade and the bitter reality that their kings, their leaders, are no longer able to guide them. As the days pass and the bitterness between the two kings grows, the failure of the Second Crusade becomes more than just a military defeat. It becomes a political scandal. The once strong alliances that had supported the crusade begin to fracture, and Louis VII and Conrad III find themselves unable to maintain their grip on power. The noblemen who had supported them in their pursuit of glory now see their kings as weak and ineffectual. Rivals within the courts of both kingdoms seize upon the scandal, using the Crusader failure as ammunition in their quest for power. The failure to achieve their goal in the Holy Land has not only tarnished the reputations of Louis VII and Conrad III, but it has also weakened their political positions and left them vulnerable to those who seek to undermine their rule. The finger-pointing and accusations fill the air, not just between the kings, but among the soldiers, the nobles, and the people of Europe. The failure of the crusade has become a symbol of incompetence and disunity, and there is no room for relief or celebration. The political consequences of the disaster are far-reaching, and as the Crusaders return home, they are no longer viewed as heroes, but as men whose egos and mistakes have cost thousands of lives. The dream of glory that had once seemed so attainable has been replaced with the bitter taste of defeat, and the political fallout from the failure is only just beginning to unfold. The Crusader movement, which had been a unifying force across Christendom, now faces a future clouded by division and mistrust. The failure of the Second Crusade has shattered the unity that had once bound Europe together, and the kings who should have stood as symbols of leadership now stand as broken figures, their credibility destroyed. Instead of the celebratory return they had hoped for, the Crusaders are met with accusations, finger-pointing, and a political scandal that will haunt them for years to come. The retreat from Damascus, once seen as a final chapter in a long and arduous campaign, is now etched in the memory of every Crusader as a bitter reminder of how fragile hope can be. What was supposed to be a noble defeat, a testament to the perseverance of Christendom, has instead become the symbol of failure. The dream of victory and the restoration of the Holy Land lies in ruins, buried beneath the weight of defeat. The men who once marched with hearts full of ambition and purpose now stagger back, broken by the harsh lessons of failure. The harsh reality of their situation sinks in as they march home. The once unified army is now scattered, fragmented, its spirit shattered by the cold hunger and despair that have plagued them every step of the way. The glory they had hoped for now feels like a distant, unreachable dream. The soldiers, once filled with pride, now return as mere shadows of their former selves, their faces drawn with exhaustion and defeat. The once strong sense of camaraderie and mission has dissolved into disillusionment, leaving them adrift in a world that no longer holds the promise of redemption. The failure of the Second Crusade reverberates far beyond the soldiers who fought in it. The Crusader movement, once a symbol of strength, unity, and divine purpose, begins to weaken. The hopes that had driven thousands to take up arms in the name of Christ are now replaced by doubt and regret. The vision of a united Christendom marching together to reclaim the Holy Land has fragmented. What was once a rallying cry for kings, knights, and peasants alike is now a tragic reminder of how misguided ambition can lead to ruin. The failure of the crusade erodes the very foundation of the movement. The bonds that once united the European powers in a shared mission are now torn apart by the realization that the ideal of the Crusades was never fully attainable. The soldiers return to their homelands, but they no longer have the same fervor for the cause. What had once been seen as a holy war has now become a bitter and costly misadventure, leaving behind broken spirits and shattered hopes. The unity that once defined the Crusader movement is lost replaced by a growing sense of skepticism and disillusionment. As the Crusaders return to Europe, the continent faces a new and deadly threat: the Black Death, a disease that will soon sweep through the land with devastating force, looms on the horizon. Europe, already weakened by years of war and strife, is ill-prepared for the coming plague. The Crusaders, returning from a failed campaign, find themselves even more vulnerable than before. Their bodies, already battered and exhausted from months of hardship, are ill-equipped to fend off the disease that is soon to ravage the land. The weakened state of the population, compounded by the physical and emotional toll of the crusade, leaves Europe exposed. The soldiers, having fought in the freezing cold and suffered from hunger and exhaustion, are now prime targets for the plague. Their weakened immune systems, a result of the long journey and the deprivation they endured, make them more susceptible to the disease. The Black Death spreads rapidly, and the Crusaders who once marched for glory now find themselves fighting a battle they cannot win against an invisible, unstoppable force that knows no mercy. The return of the Crusaders marks the end of an era, the end of the dream that had once inspired so many. The men who set out with pride and determination are no longer the warriors they once were. Their bodies are worn, their minds exhausted, and their spirits crushed by the weight of their failure. The banners that had once flown high in the wind are now torn and faded, a symbol of a lost cause. The dream of conquest of glory has turned to ash, and the disillusionment from the Second Crusade sets the stage for future struggles. The Crusaders are no longer seen as heroes, but as men who failed to fulfill their promises. Their return home is met not with celebration, but with pity and shame. The very idea of the Crusades, once a rallying cry for Christian unity and divine purpose, now seems tarnished by the bitter taste of defeat. The soldiers, broken by their experience, are left to question their faith, their place in the world, and the very ideals they once fought for. The future is uncertain, clouded by the scars of failure, and the legacy of the Crusader movement is now one of regret and lost potential. The Second Crusade has left a permanent mark on Europe, and the echoes of its failure will resonate for generations to come. The Crusaders who return are not the proud, valiant warriors who left. They are survivors of a tragic miscalculation, their journey ending not in glory, but in sorrow. As they make their way back to their homes, they carry with them the weight of their failure, the heavy burden of a dream that was never meant to be. And so the Second Crusade ends not with victory, but with defeat and shame. The banners that once flew high in the winds of hope are now tattered, and the dreams of glory have turned to dust. The soldiers who marched with courage and ambition now return, broken their spirits, shattered by the brutal truth of failure. Their journey, once filled with promises of conquest and redemption, has become a struggle for survival, where each step forward was a battle against the elements, against hunger, and against the cold. These men, once proud warriors of Christendom, now return to their homelands, not as heroes, but as reminders of the fragility of hope. They have learned the hardest of lessons, that even the noblest of causes can crumble, that dreams can be shattered by forces beyond our control. Their journey was not for glory, but for survival, for the simple primal need to endure against overwhelming odds. As you drift to sleep tonight, think of those men marching slowly through the snow, frost-bitten and starving. Think of their aching limbs, their empty stomachs, and the weight of their disillusionment. Let their story remind you of the delicate nature of hope, how easily it can be lost, and yet how strong the will to survive can be in the face of despair. Let it remind you, too, that even in the darkest of times when everything seems lost, the strength to carry on can still be found within. Good night, sleep well, and may the storms of history fade gently into the quiet of the night, leaving only the stillness of peace behind.